So, you've probably heard the term RICO thrown around in the movies, right? It's always about mob bosses and these super dramatic courtroom scenes. And yeah, it stands for the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, which is a really powerful law. But what does it actually take to get caught up in it? Well, it turns out the answer comes down to a surprisingly simple, but totally critical, distinction.
So let's just ask the main question right up front. What really is the difference between just working for a corrupt organization and actually helping to run it? It seems like it could be a huge gray area, but as we're about to see, the law has a very specific answer to that. It's drawn a clear line for a good reason, to go after the decision makers without just sweeping up every low-level employee.
And believe it or not, this whole legal puzzle, it really just boils down to one single word in the RICO law: participate. I mean, what does it really mean to participate in something? It's not as obvious as you might think, and the way the courts have defined this one word can literally be the difference between facing major charges and walking away completely free.
So the courts looked at this and said, okay, to participate under RICO, you can't just be a passenger on the ship. You can't even just be a deckhand who's only following orders. You have to have some role, no matter how small, in actually steering the thing. And this exact definition, it all comes from a landmark court case that set the standard we still follow today.
And that brings us to the source. We get our answer from a case called Baumer versus Pachl. This ruling is so important because it's the one that gave us the test, the exact test for figuring out who's participating enough to be liable under RICO. This is the legal bedrock for this entire idea.
Okay, and here it is. This one sentence from the court's decision, that's the whole test right there. I know, it seems pretty simple, but every single word in there was chosen so carefully. So let's actually break down what it really means.
Okay, first up, let's look at that word participate. The court was super clear here. You don't have to be the big boss, the kingpin at the top of the food chain. Liability isn't just for the people with primary responsibility. That widens the net way beyond just the person sitting in the corner office.
All right, next you see that phrase, directly or indirectly. That's a huge deal. What it means is the court doesn't really care if you had a fancy title like vice president of whatever, or if you had no title at all. This isn't about where you are on the org chart. It's all about what you actually did.
But this last part, this is the absolute heart of the matter. This is the bright line the law was looking for. No matter what, you must have played some part in directing the enterprise's affairs. You had to be involved in the management, in the control, even in a small way. That's the one thing that's absolutely required.
So this all leads to a really, really simple way to think about this whole test. It all just comes down to one question. Were you directing or were you just doing? Let's use a quick analogy because it makes this crystal clear.
Think about it like this. Picture a coffee shop. The barista, they're doing. They follow a recipe, they make the coffee, they serve the customers. They're not running the business. But the manager is directing. They're the ones setting the work schedules, ordering the coffee beans, making decisions about how the shop operates. They have a part in directing the shop's affairs. See the difference?
Okay, so let's take that same idea and apply it to a more professional setting. Let's say you have an outside accountant. They're just hired to prepare tax returns using the numbers they're handed. That's just doing. But an internal CFO who uses those same numbers to advise the company on how to manage its money, well, that person is directing. One is just a service provider, the other is a decision maker.
So, let's wrap this up. What are the big takeaways here? Well, first, remember that participation under RICO means way more than just being an employee. The real legal test, the whole thing, is whether you had some part in directing what was going on. And that's true even if you didn't have a formal title or weren't the main person in charge. It's that simple but powerful line between just doing a job and helping to run the show. And that leaves us with a pretty interesting question to think about. I mean, in today's world, with these massive, complex companies and organizations where decisions are made all over the place, just how blurry can that line between simply doing your job and actually directing the whole enterprise really get? It's definitely something to chew on.